Well, hello everyone. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson. Come here to preview the Chiefs and Saints. Ross, my man, how are you doing, sir? We haven't traveled just yet, but we're getting there.
I know it's been a little weird. I keep calling Thursday, Wednesday, and Friday, Thursday, and all this stuff. But it's just what happens when the schedule moves today. But it's been all good, man. How are you holding up?
I'm doing well, man. Just looking forward to getting out to Kansas City. It's actually one of the stadiums I have left to cross out on my bucket list, like on all the stadiums I visit. So I got 5 left, and after this one, I only have 4 left. So kind of exciting for me because I've never been over to Arrowhead. So I'm kind of really psyched and pumped that I get to go experience that. So, but other than that, I'm doing great, man. So thanks, appreciate you asking. Saints Chiefs Monday Night Football closes out Week 5 action. Look, I think before we even talk about the game, let's talk about the injuries. 16 players on the injury report, man.
Is there enough time to talk about all the injuries?
You know what? We could probably dedicate this entire game preview and just talk about injuries. But I mean, 5 players ruled out. No Taysom Hill, no Shane Lemieux, who was just your center last week.
Right.
They got Connor McGovern in here. Now we'll talk about him, obviously. No Cesar Ruiz again with the knee injury. Peyton Turner's out again, and no Willie Gay Jr. with the hand injury. But Lucas Patrick gets hurt during practice this week as the groin injury. And then Pete Werner pops up on the list now with the injury. And so he's questionable going in. Like, we talked about this, I think, a few episodes ago, but what in the heck is going on? Like, it's a valid question now. It's a plague.
Yeah, man. It's interesting, too, that there's so many sort of what you would consider negative trends for New Orleans. First of all, there's the injury trend as a whole, which this team just adds new injuries it feels like every day. And then that follows up a very injury riddled training camp as well, which was kind of passed off as like, hey, this happens at training camp. People are like getting acclimated and stuff like that. Well, still happening here once you get into the season. There's the just massive list of soft tissue injuries, which they did a really good job eliminating a couple years ago. And then now, John, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen 6 players pop up with an injury, a practice injury. And so there's just a long running list of injuries, but there's also now becoming a running list of like specific concerning things and trends that we're seeing from this New Orleans Saints team so far. Like they're always going to have long injury lists because they report every single thing. They do not mess around with the NFL's injury report sort of protocols. But even still getting to the end of the week and having a rule of 5 players out, like obviously less than ideal for this team, but it's the trends and the way and what these injuries are and things like that are, I think, the most concern thus far.
Yeah, and look, I get it. When you get injured during the game, I understand that. But like even going back to last week, Chris Olave got hurt with a hamstring injury on Friday's practice. And so it's a concerning trend when you see it happen in practice, I feel like. And look, we only get a certain portion that we're able to watch the media. It's usually like 20, 30 minutes maybe. And that's when we're taking attendance and stuff. So we don't see the entire course of practice. And so what we see is basically like stretches and maybe a couple of things, nothing like earth shattering. So we're not seeing how they do the full set of practices like we do in training camp. But look, it's concerning. And look, I think now it's a little bit more pressure on that room, with Matt Rhea's staff is like, that was the whole reason he was brought in, to reduce the soft tissue injuries, because that's what plagued them in 2022, is just always the soft tissue stuff. And it's groin or hamstring, like pick which one that you're dealing with. Right. And so it's just tough to see because, again, you don't want to use injuries as an excuse, because they got to find a way still. Like, you still got to win the football game. You still got to get in the playoffs. You still got to do all this other stuff. And so you can't hide behind injuries, especially when you tried to fix and address the problem a couple of years ago. And now it seems like it's coming back to bite them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the Saints aren't the only ones that look like this, right? I don't know if you saw, John, the Raiders injury report is even longer. Last week, I think it was the Bears maybe, and then the Dolphins and the Patriots, like their injury reports have typically been long, if I'm recalling correctly. I went through and I did that whole study of the injury reports and game designations last week and everything. And I saw some rather long injury reports. The Saints aren't uniquely lengthy in their injury reports, but I think the thing that you're looking at is the trends, right? The soft tissue injuries and then the practice injuries, I think, are two things that are most concerning. And look, every team's going to deal with them. As Dennis Allen often says, nobody cares that you have injuries and things like that. Like, that's the mentality of the team. I think we care when we talk about, like, okay, these players, these are from that perspective, but from the football perspective, I think he's right. I think typically, like, you can't care, right? Like, you have to move forward and you have to play the game. And so I think that's the way that this team will continue to look at it. But certainly a concerning set of trends and traits so far for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to injuries.
Yeah, look, I feel like injuries are on the uptick across the league. And of course, they want to go to 18 games and all this other stuff. It's like you're seeing the data support like the need for a extra bye week, or we've even talked about this, like extra men on the roster. Like, I mean, you just don't have enough to field it at this point. Like, it's just got to be done. So it's concerning. It's a thing. We'll keep tabs on Pete Werner. The good news is, Blake Grupe was one that popped up on there with was it a groin as well? And I think
yes,
like that.
It was a
Right groin,
right hip, or right hip, or right groin.
Something.
Yeah, one
of
those two.
And so, but he's full participant of practice. No injury designation for Demario Davis. He's playing this weekend or this Monday, so that's good news. They're going to get some people back, but now I think the focus is on this offense. Can you move the football? Can you do with what you need to with this patched offensive line once again? Connor McGovern, he's very familiar with the system. He's got ties to John Benton, the offensive line coach. He's knows the verbiage. He was telling us on Saturday about working with Gary Kubiak too and such. And so I mean, I feel good about that he's picking it up so quick. But man, this is what their fifth center that they're on. So it's kind of nuts that this is where it's going. Like, I mean, fifth option, because Caesar was another option. You lose McCoy to the groin surgery, and then obviously Shane Lemieux is not an option. And they use Lucas Patrick too, who's also questionable. But what is the Saints' plan on the offensive line, and how are they going to move the football? Because they got Chris Jones on the other side to worry about too.
Yeah, it's going to be really challenging, John, because not only is the offensive line hurt, but Kansas City is like the number 7 team right now when it comes to defending against the zone run. When it comes to their run defense, they allow, I think it's only 3.55 yards per carry in the zone run. And that's the New Orleans Saints bread and butter. I mean, they have run the most zone run rushes across the entire NFL. I believe it sits with 82. The only team that they're ahead of, or the team that's right behind them, is the Atlanta Falcons with 80. So it's not like a huge gap, but still, the Saints are number 1 in that category. And we know what we saw against the Philadelphia Eagles. If you take away the run game, then the Saints offense has struggled. So can you either get your run game going up against Chris Jones and the Kansas City Chiefs and Nick Bolton, another guy from the second level that plays a big role in their run stopping ability? And if you can't, then are you going to be able to produce despite the fact that you don't have the run game going your way? So I think that that's going to be something that we're going to have to watch and see what the New Orleans Saints are going to be able to do. This is not going to be an easy task for them. I don't think anybody would have expected that it was going to be, but particularly over on the offensive side, when you're playing in a very hostile environment like the Arrowhead Stadium that you mentioned earlier, an offensive line that's banged up big time, and you're about to have your third straight new starting center in as many games. So you're talking about communication, cadence, all this other stuff, and then everything that messes that up in terms of the environment. Plus, you're going up against what has been a very solid run defense, both against the man run and the zone run. Then, yeah, I think that can give the New Orleans Saints a little bit of trouble over on that side. There are some things that they should be able to take advantage of, but those are the biggest concerns right now when it comes to what the injuries in the offensive line show.
Yeah, and look, McGovern was talking even again Saturday, saying like he's going to go home and do flashcards and stuff. But it seems like it's a pretty easy transition, so it does make me feel good about that. But look, as far as we know, the plan is still Landon Young's going to play at right guard this week, and at left guard, I think Nick Saldiveri is going to be up if Lucas Patrick can't go. And so I think that's going to be something, it's time. Like, he was their guy that they wanted to start, and he can go back to the Senior Bowl, and they said that he can compete to start all this other stuff. So he might get his shot, but he may not. We'll see. I mean, and in Talia Sifuanga, he's got the knee injury that was added, but he has no injury designation. Then it sounds like he's going to be good to go. Look, they're in prime time. 1-5 record for Dennis Allen. He only has the one Monday night win against the Panthers last year. Derek Carr's 3-14 against the Chiefs. Only beat them once there, and that was in 2020, the COVID season. And so the deck's stacked against the Saints. I've seen some national guys pick the Saints. And I kind of scratch my head. And look, we've been talking about this too. And we even said this on our postgame, Joe, that we're, you know, it's easy for us to pick the Chiefs and stuff. But, offensively, I think it comes down to, can you execute with what you have? They've got to get more of their players involved, right? Like, we know Kamara is going to get touches. We know Chris Olave is going to get touches. We know Rashid Shaheed is going to get touches. But beyond that, you're going to need more from Jamal Williams. You're going to need more. Maybe you see Jordan Mims. I don't know if Kendry Miller comes back this week. I just, Dennis Allen said he had a good week of practice, but he still also said that he's got to learn the playbook, get into football shape. So that leads me to believe that I don't think he's just ready yet. But as of Saturday afternoon, about 4:00 Central Time, he's not active, right? And so we'll see. But they got to get guys like Dallin Holker involved or Juwan Johnson. I mean, no Taysom Hill, it hurts your run game. But if I'm Clint Kubiak, how do I attack this Chiefs defense now? Because Steve Spagnuolo is good. Obviously he wasn't so good in 2012 for the Saints, but he's got this defense playing, at a really high level when it counts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the things that work in the Saints' favor on the offensive side is the fact that Kansas City hasn't been able to generate much of a pass rush outside of Chris Jones. I think they're the number 20 team right now in pressure rate over on the defensive side. And so the Saints can't, and we've discussed this before because it's kind of what happened against Philadelphia. It kind of started to happen against Atlanta as well. You can't gift them a pass rush all of a sudden. And when you're playing with a hurt offensive line, like there's a chance that you do that. And that's something that the Saints are going to have to navigate. So I think that's one thing that could play in their favor is the lack of pass rush opportunity that the Chiefs have been able to generate outside of Chris Jones. So can the Saints game plan for Chris Jones with the game plan for Micah Parsons? I don't know, because you don't have your full complement like you did in that game. We'll see. The other thing that I think you have to do to attack this team when it comes to Kansas City is you're going to have to be able to throw the football. If not because you're not going to be able to necessarily run as successfully, then certainly because you might not be able to run as successfully, but certainly because it's the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to put points on the board. And so you're going to throw the football. And so one of the things that I think you can take a little bit of kind of solace in when it comes to Kansas City is that they play a lot of middle of the field open defenses, cover 2, cover 4, meaning that there's not a deep lurking safety that's lurking in the middle of the football field. So when you get those looks, can you take advantage of the speed of Rashid Shaheed, take advantage of the speed of Chris Olave, and be able to attack those areas deep or attack those areas in the intermediate area? I think those are going to be the big things and the big kind of hot spots for New Orleans to attack in the middle of the field. And they've done a good job of focusing towards the middle of the field. I think they're one of the top teams in targeting inside breaking routes so far this season. I know through the first 3 games, they were the top team there. Kubiak's system was. And so that's something to watch in this one is how do the Saints take advantage of, if they can, attack in the middle of the football field in the passing game. I think that's going to be pivotal for any level of success they're going to be able to find in Kansas City.
Yeah, and again, Chris Jones is a hard one, and I know Kubiak said the other day, it's like he's a guy you got to know where he's at all times, right? Like, and that's just reality. Like he's just a one-on-one type player, like an Aaron Donald was. You just know he's going to do something in the game to disrupt it. And so, look, I don't think you can totally shut him out like you did a Micah Parsons or Demarcus Lawrence. I think you can limit him, but again, that interior with a new center, presumably a new left guard, and then your right guard is playing a second career right guard game. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it makes for an interesting challenge. Now I know they're ready for it. I think some of the players I talked to in the locker room this week, they just said how crisp things were at practice this week, that, it's a good vibe, right? Like, I don't think there's, and we said this even after the game, nobody's getting too low on themselves. And of course there's all the time in the world, but they're just a couple of fluke plays away from being undefeated, but they are what their record says at 2-2. And so I think offensively, they've got to keep up some of the third down, percentage. Like they're top 10 offense in a lot of their categories right now. Third down is one of them. And the same thing with the red zone. And so they've been able to capitalize in leaps and bounds better than what they were last year. But, this is the Chiefs in their building. We know it's going to be loud. And so pre-snap penalties, illegal shifts, those are probably going to be killers for this team too. And so I think that's something to keep an eye on. But, for me, it's getting more people involved, and they got to get more run support out of some of their other guys that are not 41. And so we'll see if that can actually happen. But I think they can put points up on the board. I think that they can get where they need to. This is their first outdoor game. Defensively, you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, and you've got Travis Kelce. I don't care what they don't have. If you have 15, you got a really good chance to win a football game.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's, it starts with the pass rush. I left a lot to the imagination last week. Mahomes is a magician once he's able to get out of the pocket, and he just makes things happen. So if you're going to have him extend the plays, you can't get him down. It does not mean good things, right? And so for me, again, no Peyton Turner. He was the one that got the pass rush going last week. And Carl Granderson graded out really well, but Chase Young and Carl Granderson, and we might see Cam Jordan a little bit more. Do you think this is more of control the run a little bit more and isolate Kelce, or is this more about Patrick Mahomes? Got to stop him.
Yeah, I think you're trying to take away Patrick Mahomes' weapons, because you're not going to minimize Patrick Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes is going to do things that only Patrick Mahomes can do. And so you're trying to take away his weapons and then give him nowhere to go with the football. And you're trying to take away the run game too. And this is where New Orleans maybe does have a little bit of an opportunity to match up pretty well. The Kansas City Chiefs heavily rely on the man run concept as opposed to the zone run concept. So they run a little bit of a different run game when it comes to where, what we see in New Orleans all the time. And so from that, I think the next thing that you're looking at is, if you can take away that run game a little bit and then double team Travis Kelce, you're putting a little bit of a bind on Patrick Mahomes. So I think that that's the big thing that you're looking at there. I think there's other things here too, because there's something that the Kansas City Chiefs have done extremely well so far this season that matches up in a place where New Orleans has done very well over the course of the first half of these games, but not so much over the second half of these games. And I think that to me is going to be the big kind of difference maker for the New Orleans Saints defense. But we'll get to that here in a moment.
Hey folks, John Hendricks here from Second and Saints. Look, we know it's the greatest time of the year again. Football's back, and it's here to stay until February. Look, over 1 million fans across 33 states got in a game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player's stats, whether it's touchdowns, passing yards, and much more. Who doesn't like apps? And Underdog has a real easy app to use. But if you're like me, I like to use a website too. So when I want to look at more stats for a game or look at splits for Alvin Kamara, this is a good site for us to go check all of that information out. Making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com, sign up with promo code SecondSaints, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SecondSaints, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. You must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. I love Underdog because it's so easy to use and it's so fast to get started and play. Sign up process is really smooth, and they have a slick mobile app. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Underdog today. Use that code SecondSaints, and we'll see you in the game. Yes, make sure you go use Second Saints for Underdog Fantasy. Appreciate them for sponsoring our show. Ross, we were talking about the offense. You were talking about Patrick Mahomes. And of course, look, he's a special breed. I think Kansas City, they're not as great as they maybe were previously at home. Like, they are a beatable team, right? Like, this is a big thing. I think this game's probably going to come down to a final drive. Like, let's just be real here. I think this is another situation where the Saints are going to be in a position where they have to close out the game, and they're either going to have to stop Mahomes or they're going to have to put some points up on the other side of the equation. I think the big thing for me is we've seen the defense now in 2 weeks. They've had the chances to make the stop and potentially close out the game, but they haven't. What's kind of your vibe, your sense of where their mindset is at, and kind of what they're thinking through at this point? I mean, because I know a lot of people think, oh, let's point fingers, let's play the blame game, all this other stuff. But anything that you've gathered for insight from what you've seen in the locker room?
Yeah. I think that the defensive players are pointing fingers, but they're pointing the fingers at themselves. That's what I typically get the temperature of is. And speaking with an offensive player a few weeks ago after the loss to Philly, it was very similar situations where everybody kind of pointed the finger back at themselves. And so I think that's not only true for the defense, I think that's true for the entire team. But I think that like that's the right attitude. And look, I was saying a second ago that, there's a space where the Saints like have the ability to match up, but they've struggled in the second half to where they might be able to exploit, excuse me, a little bit of the kind of cracks in the foundation of, as you mentioned, a beatable Kansas City team. And it comes down to tackling at the catch point. The Saints do very well. And actually, Dennis Allen talked about this the other day. They've done a very good job of tackling securely in the first half, but then in the second half, not so much, right? And so it's led to some of these big plays and things like that. The Saints have to be able to tackle at the catch point, especially going up against Kansas City. Kansas City is not the explosive play offense that they have been in the recent past. They're actually tied for the third least explosive plays in the NFL, as defined by rushes of over 10 yards, which is actually pretty lenient. Typically, you talk about 15 yards when it comes to rushing plays, and then passing plays of over 20 yards. We got 16 so far this season. Just for reference sake, the Saints are sitting at 23. And so I think you have to consider that. And then the other thing you have to consider, when it comes to those explosive plays, is that the majority, it is 64.8% of Patrick Mahomes' passing yards have come after the catch so far. And look, Rashee Rice was a big part of that, the wide receiver. He's on injured reserve. And so now you're looking at Travis Kelce, the tight end, to be able to help them with that. Xavier Worthy, the rookie wide receiver, to be able to help them there. And so for the Saints, like tackling at the catch point is going to be big, because you don't want to continue to give up explosive plays, especially to Patrick Mahomes and head coach Andy Reid and that offense that has the ability to just kind of burn out and get going up out of nowhere. And so I think that's going to be a big, big piece of the story in this game, is if the Saints are able to tackle securely, especially at the catch point, the defense puts themselves in position to at least give the offense a chance. If they can't tackle, this game gets away from them very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Now, here's the thing I think of, because, we talk about it, like Paulson Adebo. Obviously, he's a guy that's been under a lot of scrutiny, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Mahomes, do I look his way a little bit more, given what happened last week? I mean, I know Adebo is going to be ready for this game, but maybe he can use that to his advantage this week.
Yeah. I think every team has kind of clued in on the fact that either Adebo plays physically or gets officiated as a more physical player, whichever way it is that you want to look at it. I couldn't care less, but like whichever way you want to look at it, that's the truth. And I think we saw that last week. I think Paulson Adebo was targeted 13 times against Atlanta.
10 solo tackles.
Yeah. And we've talked about that before too, right? Like anytime that your secondary players are leading your team in tackles, it's typically not a great sign, outside of maybe your slot corner. But which, by the way, Alontae Taylor has been awesome so far this year. Like one of the best 3 players on this team throughout the first 4 games. So shout out to Alontae. But I will say that, I think, when it comes to Paulson, like, I mean, if either one of us was a starting quarterback, like we'd go after him too. And that's the thing, like he has to be able to adjust that. And we've seen that in game, him be able to kind of have that short memory and then turn around and be able to get an interception or make a play and all these other things. I don't think Adebo is very bothered by the penalties that he draws. He just plays his game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, I just, it's tough to just say, oh, it's just his fault or all this. And it's all hindsight. There's just so many different ways you could approach it and say this is thing. And the bottom line is they lost, right? Like that's the thing. They couldn't close it out for 2 straight weeks. And I mean, they're still 2-2 no matter what. Even if you put it on whatever, they're still 2-2. And so look, they need this game. We know they need this game. And it's going to be a little bit challenging. No Willie Gay Jr. I think, Anthony Orji is going to be a guy that steps up a little bit more here. Probably going to see a little bit more, maybe DeMarco Jackson as well, especially if Pete Warner's out of the equation. Like, I mean, now they go from being a real strong defensive, unit with the linebacking room, and now it's kind of like a big one to Willie Gay Jr. with that hand injury, which again, he had some type of procedure done on it and such, but we don't got the specifics. We just know there was a procedure done obviously on that one, but it's unfortunate that he's going to probably miss some time here. And he's a guy that I couldn't wait to see play on this field, and just haven't seen a lot of him. And so the Saints linebackers, obviously they're going to have their work cut out. You got Carson Steele and Kareem Hunt that are going to end up being out there. Kareem Hunt didn't do too bad last week, but I think it's a little bit different challenge for him this week. And, the Saints defense, it's really going to be a lot on them for sure. And look, I feel, again, we go to game picks here. I said I was going to probably take the Chiefs. I just don't know if I can this week. I really don't.
Really?
I just like my head
Daring.
says you got to go with the Chiefs, right? But for me, these are the types of things with all the things that the Saints are dealing with. This feels like the game where they're just like, I don't care. We're still going to find a way to win come hell or high water. I think it's close game, but I think the Saints could pull one out of the hat in this one. I don't think it's going to be by much. I'm going to take the Saints. Yes, you heard me right. I'm going to take the Saints. I'm going to take them 24-20 tonight on Monday Night Football. I wanted to take the Chiefs. I told you guys on the post-game show last week I was going to take the Chiefs. I have changed just because it was a feeling. I had a feeling for Dallas. Probably wrong. They're probably going to lose. But what say you, Ross Jackson?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times we end up finding ourselves, you and I, on the same wavelength on stuff that we haven't previously already discussed. Like we plan the show before we do the show and all that kind of stuff. But like certain things like this, we purposely don't talk about. But so there's a little bit of symmetry between what it is that we're looking at here. Just I have Kansas City winning this game. Here's how I think it plays out. It is 24-13 at nearing the end of the game. New Orleans has the football. They march, they score, they narrow the game to 20-24, and then get the ball back, but aren't able to get a game-winning drive to get going. Right? They get it late, but not the right one late, or not the second one late. So I also have this game being 24-20, but I have it ending in a Kansas City win. Is the way that I'm looking at it.
Look, I don't disagree. I mean, I think that's a very realistic way that could play out. And look, fans are going to start puking if they lose a game like that. And again, like this, I think it was. I wrote about it and put it out there. I think they're 8-16 or something in one-score games. It's not good. Like it's just their record in one-score games is not good. And Dennis Allen's primetime record is not good. Derek Carr's record against the Chiefs is not good. I just think it has the recipes for something to change, right? Like it's time for the Chiefs to lose, and so we'll be up in Taylor Swift land, obviously, and it'll be fun. I don't know. We're just gonna see it, and look, after this you got the Bucks and at home, and then you got the Broncos on a short week, and you got some mini bye, if you will, and they're going to need that game against Tampa. I think Tampa, the way they played against Atlanta, there's ways this offense can really exploit them. But you got to get over this hurdle. You got to stop the bleeding. You got to be able to produce a win. Like you just need it. And this is a game where they got to steal it. And so we said 3-2 by this point. We didn't think the Chiefs one would be one that they could pull off, but somehow I think they're going to find a way. I just do.
Yeah. And look, I think coming out of these first 5 games, 2 and 3 still fine, thanks to the way that the rest of the NFC South has kind of cannibalized each other. Like Saints got a lot of help with an Atlanta Falcons win on Thursday Night Football. It sucks to say, but it's the truth. And so even if they lose this game, they lose to an AFC opponent, so not weighted the same way as an NFC or worse NFC South loss. But it gives them an opportunity with Tampa coming to town to be 1 game behind Tampa and 1 game behind the Atlanta Falcons. So the Saints could potentially tie for second place with a win, at worst with a win. And then, I don't know, maybe Atlanta, chokes against Carolina or something like that, but I'm not putting any money on that. But it at least keeps the New Orleans Saints kind of in range of not allowing the division to kind of get away from them. So it's a good space for them to be in. It gets better if they shock the world with a win against Kansas City for sure. And I think that's such a big confidence builder. It's a narrative changer. It's all these other things in terms of what that win can be, especially if they do it convincingly. And convincingly doesn't mean by a wide margin, just by, going blow to blow with the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. I think that's a good confidence builder. I think that's a good narrative changer. So this could work out for New Orleans. I don't think that they're like dead before they show up by any means or anything like that. But like this is, it's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one, a tall task. But even in the worst case scenario, in terms of a loss, they're not even really out of the conversation at that point. So that is a good thing for New Orleans.
Yeah. I mean, guys, it's week 5 of the season. Like you still got a whole mess of games left. And look, we said this was the first part of their schedule. This was going to be the tough one. And they still got some tougher games down the road. Like, I mean, Washington looks really good right now. Like, I think that's one that's obviously going to be a little bit more important. The Giants aren't so hot. That's one in your favor. The Chargers are trying to figure things out. Like, that's another one. Denver's beatable. You got all these other opponents that are going to be on the docket that I feel like they're going to be able to come in and, produce a win, and Raiders are another one that's kind of in turmoil right now. So it's just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I think they can rally and be better in the back half if they have to be. But, a win like this, and I would say this too, that even if they do get this win, people are going to shift the goalposts. They're going to say, well,
Sure.
Mahomes
Yeah.
didn't have all his weapons and blah, blah, blah. But the Saints don't have anybody either, guys. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
like
They're
they're
just as
lost
hurt.
to a lot of the people. Like they are hurt. I mean, I get it. They have a couple of guys, but no Taysom Hill's a big deal. No Cesar Ruiz is a big deal. No Eric
Yeah.
McCoy. I mean, shoot, it's just
Huge.
no Willie Gay Jr. I mean,
And don't forget Lucas Patrick. Lucas
Yeah,
Patrick was the second highest graded offensive lineman in the league, right behind Eric McCoy. So, I mean, that's a pretty big loss for them to have to deal with as well.
Yeah,
if he ends up not playing, which
right, and if he doesn't, I think they'll probably call Kyle Hergel up again, from the practice squad. I mean, he was getting some center snaps like even before, so he's somebody to keep an eye on. I don't know if that's going to be the plan, but if McGovern goes down, hopefully not.
Right.
Hopefully not. And just
Gotta
no
be
more
ready.
Injuries, please.
Yeah,
Football gods.
for real.
But any rate, all right. Well, Ross, what's coming up at LouisianaSports.net? You guys are rocking and rolling over there, and obviously, what else is coming up at Locked On?
Yeah. So both will have 5 things to watch for in this game over the course of the weekend. I think the article will be out Sunday, and then the podcast will be part of Monday's episode, and then also part of Monday's episode will be the game plan. What is it the New Orleans Saints have to do schematically to take advantage of where Kansas City has showed some lacking and things like that. So how to take advantage of some of those weaknesses if the New Orleans get the opportunity to do so. So that's going to be the big focus here as the New Orleans Saints get ready for their Monday Night Football matchup. What about you over at Saints on SI?
Yeah, look, I wrote my keys to the game earlier, my ingredients for a New Orleans victory and stuff. And then obviously we got to talk about, cover this stuff about the fines. Marshawn Lattimore and Alontae Taylor got some fines for unsportsmanlike conduct gestures or something from the Falcons game. So that was 16 grand for Marshawn and 10 grand or something for Alontae. Not the exact figures, people, but
it's a lot,
a little bit interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of money for gestures, but I mean, hey, they just like the Christian Boyd fine that people got to understand that can't find the guy more than what his 10% of his salary and all that other stuff was. But at any rate, so that, and of course we got plenty of game coverage and all the other things that are coming down the pipeline. So it's a good time. And hopefully when we meet on this post-game show, which is going to be super late. So if you guys are there, we'll really appreciate it if you guys tune into us live. But also we're talking about doing another live show in Los Angeles when we come out there. So if you guys are also interested in that, just drop a note. And so we know kind of how to rally. And of course it was worth it last time because we had a lot of support, but we're more than happy to do it again. And we got a venue picked out in Inglewood already. So we're just kind of waiting to pull that trigger and stuff. But at any rate, that's going to do it for Second and Saints today. On behalf of Ross Jackson, I'm John Hendricks signing out. You guys be good people, and we will see you after the game. It's going to be 24-20. We just don't know who's going to win. Y'all have a good one, guys. Thanks.
Love you.